Hello guys. So I have a GitHub repository for a special configuration of VS Code for competitive programmers. Actually, it just makes the input and output easy, as most of the time we need to give input something and get a result from our code. After configuration, you can give the inputs of code into a input.txt file, then run the code with a shortcut key and show the output of the code into another output.txt file. For Linux machines or Linux version, it will also show program analysis like computational time and other stuff. Though you can use dedicated IDEs like Codeblocks for that, but I just love VS Code and make things automated. Actually, I did make a video on setting up the configuration for Linux machines, Debian based, in my YouTube channel, but it turned out that setting up for Windows machines are complex, or I would say tricky. Though I have a separate README file documentation in the repository, many people suggest me to make a video for Windows machines. By the way, I recently had found that the previous video have about 14k views, and also the repository have about 100 plus stars and 54s. I will add the links of the repository and video in the description here. So let's start. As the video is about how to configure the settings for Windows machine, I am inside a Windows 10 which is running in a VirtualBox. If you don't know about VirtualBox, it's actually a application where you can run multiple operating system and test them and other things. So as I am currently using Ubuntu as my primary machine, I have installed the Windows 10 in a VirtualBox. So in my repository, I have already mentioned that what are the pre-requirements for this configuration. I should remind you that this is a one-time configuration. You don't need to do these things multiple times in your machine. And I should also describe you why you need these things. Actually, when you are using a dedicated IDE for development or coding, generally the IDE have everything already prepared for you. You are just using the tool. You don't need to think about other hassles. But as a programmer, I believe you need to know about how these things actually works under the hood. Else you will be just a programmer, not an engineer. These are just my beliefs. And I also believe that you will learn a lot of new things from this video. So hold your belt and watch it out. So when you are using, let's say, Codeblocks, you just press a button and technically a window pop-up or terminal pop-up, you give the input every time and get a result in the console. What happens here? Do you know you could just write a code in a notepad or in a text editor and run the code. You can just write a .cpp file or .c file and run the code manually from the terminal, or for Windows it's CMD or PowerShell. There are some commands we need to build. Run, or execute the code, and under the hood, the IDEs or Codeblocks is doing these things for you. And very importantly, before running this code or commands, you need a compiler, as already you have know that this C or C++ is a compiled language. So the code written in C need to be converted into machine language so that computer can understand it, and these things are done by the compiler. So to set up the environment, at first we need a compiler to run our code. Some operating systems like Linux or Unix based like macOS come with C or C++ compilers because most of them are written in C or C++. But in Windows, we don't have the compiler built in with the OS, so we need to download and install it. We will use the MinGW, which will actually provide the compilers and libraries for us for coding in C or C++. You can just search for it in Google and download it, or I will give the link in the description. So as you can see that I have already downloaded them, and also we will also need the VS Code obviously. So let's install the MinGW. We can we'll get a window pop-up. Just continue and everything will be done. So you can just install through the executable file, or you can just download the whole zip file and extract it, like this one. There is the folder. Inside the in the folder, the main code main executable GCC command or compiler will be there. So you can just get the thing get it from the zip file also. So now we have the MinGW, and if we want to try this, like is our we have the C++ compiler, we can just open up the CMD, or from there, if we click on the directory, top directory, and write CMD and hit enter, the CMD, Windows CMD is opened in that specific folder or directory, you can say. And here, if we type GCC and enter, there will be an error. That error is about that we didn't give any CPP file or C file, but it's telling us that we have the GCC compiler or C compiler here. So next thing, we need to install the VS Code. So we can see that our Visual Studio Code is installed, and we just can finish and launch the VS Code. Okay, so we get the VS Code. One thing, we have installed the MinGW, and it installed our GCC compiler or C++ compiler, but our Windows application doesn't know where it belongs. So we have to set up the system environment. Like if I can show you something. Let's open another CMD. We can just search for it and press enter. Okay. In here, if we press the we type GCC and hit enter, the CMD is saying that GCC is not recognized as an internal or external command. So it doesn't know where the GCC where the GCC will be there, or where it should pick up the executable file. So what we need is we need to set up the system environment. For this, we can just search for system environment. Like we got that edit the system environment variables. Here we can see that the environment variables, and like we can see that there are some paths. So basically we are telling Windows that this you can find this command there. So I have already described these things in my repository documentation. You can just check it here, check it from here, and go through accordingly. So what we need, we basically need to add a new path. So we can see that system variables here, we will find a variable named path. Press double clicking on the path, we can see that we can edit the system variables, like add new ones and also delete or edit them. We need to add a new one. And what will be the path? So we can just go to our file manager, and like I have the MinGW inside my downloads folder, and if you install it using the MinGW setup, that Windows wizard, installation wizard, you most probably you will find the MinGW folder in local your C drive. Inside C drive there will be a MinGW, and there will be your other files. So what we will take is there will be a bin file, like inside my download folder there will be a bin file, and inside that bin you have the executable exe file, DLL files, which will be basically needed for running your code. So I will just copy the path from here. You can just click on the path and press Ctrl C, and it will be copied. So, and going to the system variable, add a new path, new variable here in the system variables, and press enter and OK. Everything going OK, and apply. Now if we open a CMD, another CMD, and press GCC and hit enter, we are getting an error that no input file. So now our Windows can recognize the GCC. So that's our environment setup done for GCC compiler. Now let's open our VS Code, and in VS Code, let's say in my file manager, let's say where will be the coding folder. Let's say inside my documents I will create a folder, my code, and in VS Code I will open the folder. So you need to open the folder, not the file, okay, because we are setting an environment for your workspace. So in code, let's select folder. So VS Code will be open there. So that's a hello world in C++. We will test our code to if our compiler is compiling our code properly or not. So open the terminal from top menu, select new terminal. You have to ensure that you are in the CMD terminal. This can be PowerShell. If this is the PowerShell, then you have to select the drop down, and you can select default profiles, and a pop-up will come, and select command prompt, which is actually the CMD. Selecting that, and if you then open a new terminal, then you must see that your terminal is CMD. We can just close the previous one, and it's CMD. And if we close this and open new terminal, it should always be the CMD terminal, okay, not the PowerShell. Okay, so let's try out if our code is working fine with the compiler or not. So hello.cpp, so actually that's the command to run a cpp file, and let's say the file name will be hello. If we press and hit enter, then we can see that we have got a new file called hello.exe. So in Windows, your executable files are named with extension .exe. Now we can run it, hello.exe, and hit enter, and we can see that it's saying hello world. So basically we compile the code to a executable file and run it in our machine without any IDE. Congratulations. So now we know how to run a C++ file or CPP file and execute it in our Windows machine, but that will be painful if we have to do it every time. So what we'll do, as I have already said, that we will use a .txt input file and another file, output.txt, where the output or result of the code will be there. So let's start creating a input.txt file and output.txt file, and we will split our screens. How can we do that? We can just press any of the file using mouse right mouse and split right, and here pressing on the file and pressing on the right mouse and split down. So we'll open the input file from here, and for the right bottom section we will select output file. Okay, so we can see that we have splitted our vscode window like this. So to run a file, a C++ or C file, you need to be focus on that file and press Ctrl Shift and V. So it's saying that no task build task to run, so we have to create a new one. We'll create new task template from others, selecting others. Okay, that will be fine. So we can see that there is a .vscode and tasks.json file is created here. So we'll go to my repository and open and copy and paste the whole file from top to bottom, and we'll Ctrl A and press Ctrl V. Okay, so we have copy and paste the tasks.json file for Windows. Okay, another thing, you can get it from the VS Code configuration. You can go to my repository, and here is a folder config files, C and C++, Windows, as we are using Windows machine, and tasks.json file. That's the file. Okay, I have copied it already. Now if we again go to the hello.cv file and now press the Ctrl Shift and B, let's see what happens. You can see that there is a building sign. You can press on it. Okay, you can see that what's happening inside. To run our code, we can see there that actually that's the command, automated command we are using here. We can check it. You can see that the result hello world is printed in the output.txt file. We can do another things like int n and c in the n. Also hello world, we can just print the input. Let's input 100. And okay, another thing that you can see that there is a dot, so it means that the file is not saved. We can just use the autosave from the menu. Autosave is marked, so everything will be saved. Now if we press Ctrl Shift and B, we can check that we get that output. So that's it. Now you can also create other folders like test, and in this folder you can create a new file, test.cpp, and we just copy and paste it. We can just copy and paste the file, and if let's change the input number and press Ctrl Shift and B, and we got our output here. So basically you don't need to create you can just create another folder or anything else. Your input.txt and output.txt will be there in the base directory, I mean the main directory, your working space where the working space is, and you can just run your file like that. So thanks.